2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore, where we are continuing our help me with this, guys. What is our
I think the probably the best way to call it is we are looking at comic-based movies that are not superhero movies, Western region.
Yeah, pretty much.
So the film that we have tonight for you guys is a film that was filmed in 2013, and it was directed by Bong Joon Ho. And this was not my first introduction to this director. I know him from Host, which was a fairly cool Keiju
Oh yeah, Host was great. I like
monster movie. So when he came out with this sci-fi thing, I was ecstatic to go see it, but I didn't get a chance to see it in the theater. I wish I could have, because this is the kind of movie that I would think that would be awesome in the movie theater.
I'm sure it would have. Yeah,
I don't like audiences in the movie theater. I don't like how they act. So I tend to, and especially in this day and age with the pandemic going on, it's kind of hard to get to a theater at this point in time, even if they tried to re-put it in the theater. So, but let me just go and say what IMDb says about the film, and then we'll go on to our discussion. First impressions here. So, in the future, where a failed climate change experiment has killed all life except for the lucky few who boarded the Snowpiercer, a train that travels around the globe, a new class system emerges. So, first impressions, I'll go with you, Brandon, first. What was your first impression of this film?
So I also remember this director from Host. So when my wife had come to me and said, "Hey, you should check this out. This is by the guy who did Host." I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. Sure, I will check this out. This sounds like fun." And then we went ahead and started establishing it over on streaming, because that was where I first got introduced to it, was through streaming. And I can't remember when that was. That was it was a while back. I can't remember what year. What year did this come out?
It came out in 2013. It came to the U.S. in 2014.
So probably around 2015 or so.
So I would have to say around the same time for me too.
So because it was around the time it was right around the time it hit streaming services, because I watched it on Netflix. And I guess my reaction would be very similar, Dave, to how you reacted to Popeye the first time. I was kind of disappointed with it. I thought I was looking at the cast and all of that, and I was expecting something much more than what I got. I never got to read the comics. I wasn't going to pay I wasn't going to pay $60 to get the basic story. And
it's interesting that you say comic instead of graphic novel, because when we were talking about our Alan Moore discussion, we were Alan Moore, when he referred to his graphic novel, he referred to it as a comic.
So again, to me, it's potato. It's not really. To me, it's interchangeable. Those people who will tell you, "I don't read comics, I read graphic novels," they're just trying to be snooty.
People. Yeah.
So I don't really care. You can interchange them. I don't really care. It's essentially, though, the 3 volumes are 20 each. Couldn't get them at the library at the time. So, and there's also another one that I think they released a prequel that they're doing now, which I guess to go along with the series that's been out.
I guess.
So is this actually kind of an opportune time to cover it because of the series? And my second viewing of it, I liked it much better because I really knew what to expect. Again, I think, Jacob, you said it right last time when we were talking about lowering expectations. And
Oh,
when
yeah.
I lowered expectations for it, I really did. I really did enjoy it the second time.
All right.
Okay. What about you, Jake? What was your first impression of this film? Was this a first time watch for you?
It actually was. I feel somewhat ashamed to admit it. In fact, there's some reasons to be somewhat ashamed about it, but we'll get to that. But this was actually one I think I heard about the summer that it came to the U.S. I have a coworker who had a coworker, I guess technically, that I talk a lot movies with, and she's kind of one of those people that I've tried and tried and tried and tried to convince her that anime is art, and she will not agree with it. She does not believe me, and
Mhm.
it's similar to the prejudice people have against the word comic. You know, so it's like a lot of people will use that word graphic novel because it's, you know, and in our library we refer to them as graphic novels, and but she had told me apparently one of her sons is really big into sci-fi and had said that this was a great film, and she had seen it and said, you gotta see Snowpiercer. And I think that was the first time I'd really heard about it. I might have seen it in passing. I've been thinking about it ever since. I've been meaning to watch it and just never quite made time for it. And finally, a few months back, I decided I'm going to take this home and watch it from the library. And this is during the pandemic, which is why I can justify sitting on it for months. My brother's saw it, was like, I want to see that too. And they never made an effort at all. So I honestly was going to see this months ago because my first actual impression with Bong Joon Ho was I did go to theaters to see Parasite and fell instantly and madly in love with the film. I love Parasite, absolutely. And I've been wanting ever since then to see more of this guy's stuff. And I wanted to, you know, that's the thing when you try to incorporate trying to watch stuff with someone, it can just
And
turn into a nightmare. And then finally, right about the time I got fed up with waiting, this topic came across and it became clear that Snowpiercer was going to be a choice. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I intend to get this film regardless. I intend to get Popeye regardless. I will just order them. So I still sat on it for a month because I wanted to watch it to be fresh for the show. And I've got other things that I didn't know if I would be able to watch it twice. So, you know, but I finally saw it. And my first impression after all that waiting and build up, and I debated reading the comics to prepare for this, and I just didn't think I would have time.
Let me just interject with the name of the comic. The name of the comic is based on a French graphic novel or comic, whichever you prefer, called Les Transpersonnage by Jack Loeb or Loeb.
Yeah.
And Benjamin Legrand and Jean-Marc Rochette. So I just wanted to point that out there, what the name of it was. So go ahead.
And movie written by Ho and Masterson, which is interesting because apparently, and you know, Dane wanted to give us a clear dividing point between East and West, but here we have a French comic adapted by a Korean and an American, but primarily a Korean, infusing it with a strongly Eastern sensibility. To the point where, from what I understand, Dave, you might have had trouble finding this in the theater because apparently it was distributed here by the Weinstein Company. Harvey Weinstein had no faith in the director's cut of the film and didn't expand its release until the audience reaction was positive. Like the audiences loved it.
I believe that this was playing at our Milwaukee Oriental Theater.
Okay.
We have a specific theater in town called the Oriental, and it's been around for like decades. And it's the specific theater that you go to see international films at.
Right.
And I've
So
seen
the art house theater, basically. Yeah. Yeah. I have a feeling like in Roanoke, for example, I probably came to the Grandin, that sort of thing. Yeah. I went to an art house theater to see Parasite come to it. But this was my first impression of this was that I had my hopes raised pretty high. The cast is phenomenal, so that is also a factor as well. It's an incredible cast. My hopes have been raised pretty high, but I had also heard some mixed reports over the years. So I kind of went into it expecting a lot, but braced for the worst. And I don't think I was terribly let down. It's obviously not on the same level as Parasite, but as far as a sci-fi thriller with an axe to grind, which it does, it has an axe to grind. It's pretty good, and I enjoyed it, and I'm glad I finally saw it, and I'm glad I have it, and I'll hopefully give it another look sooner than later.
Well, my first impression of this, I think I kind of mentioned this, that I saw it in like 2015. I picked it up for like $5 somewhere, and actually, I think I know exactly where I picked it up. Black Friday sale.
You got it for okay. I was gonna say, how'd you get it for $5? Because I had trouble getting a good price on it.
Well, this was still in a relatively good time to probably get it with Walmart sales on Black Friday sales. So
yeah,
they ended up like having like multiple copies of it for sale. So ended up picking it up, and my first impression of this film is holy fuck. I mean, I didn't even realize that was Chris Evans until like after I'd seen Captain America, and now that I've seen quite a few films in him, he definitely does not look like Captain America in this movie. I mean, he's kind of a badass.
It's like a little bit of Captain America and a little bit of his character Ransom from Knives Out, maybe but grungier than either one. I still think Lucas Lee is the outlier. That's the one that I have trouble recognizing him.
Well, and you have this post-apocalyptic setting here, where apparently the world's been destroyed. It's all covered with ice, and they're on a really, 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 really fast-moving train. And each section has its own section. And by this point, it's like everyone on the train is nuts. Falls out nuts because you start in the tail engine where like you have this poverty like section of characters who are obviously under heavily soldiered watch, and you have a very distinct group of characters here. Well, let's take a look at characters first here. Curtis is Chris Evans' character. What do you think about Curtis as a character?
He's a pretty solid protagonist.
Yeah, I think once you get out of the whole concept of, oh, that's Chris Evans, you're fine. He's a darker character. I like the establishment that they give him in this. I think it makes him much more relatable, and I love the twist that they give him towards the end. So.
Right. It's kind of a shame that we don't have Dane to comment on that particular twist, but but yeah, it was interesting. Like he is he is a very gray character in a lot of ways. He's neither really good nor bad, but you can see how these people would rally behind him. And like I said, he does make a good protagonist, a good leader for the group. But he's always very reluctant. He almost has to be pushed into it time and again. And when you finally realize why, it's pretty interesting. And then, of course, at the end, when he finally confronts Wilford, and you see the wheels turning, and you genuinely don't know what his choice is going to be for a minute, and so that was kind of cool. I thought they played that off well.
I thought it was interesting that John Hurt played
yes
the character of Gilliam.
Yeah.
Now, John Hurt, I know him to be the storyteller. In Jim Henson's The Storyteller,
Right.
for the most part, and the voice of the dragon in the series Merlin.
Well, let's not forget, we also covered one of his quintessential roles in The Elephant Man, with where he played Merrick.
Oh, yeah.
And as I commented on our message thread, Mr. Ollivander, he's done some good stuff over the years, no doubt about it.
Well, yeah, he took up the role of Ollivander after the original Ollivander died, didn't he?
No, he was the original Ollivander.
Okay.
I think he passed away.
Okay.
Did he pass away before the Deathly Hallows? I think he passed away before the Deathly Hallows, or that might have been one of his last.
Yeah.
2017 was when he passed away. Which, yeah, that was too bad. But he what was I going to say? I liked him a lot as Gilliam, and that was also a character that has a little bit of a final act twist. But he really, he has kind of a sort of I guess you could say kind of an Obi-Wan feel in this one, sort of like the the shrouded mentor figure who's
almost like the Splinter character of the group.
A little bit, yeah.
So, what do you think about Brandon Gilliam as a character?
I mean, it's just your standard antagonist. I really felt like this movie felt a lot like your typical YA novel, much like The Hunger Games, much like this, but one that had a slightly different cog in the gears, because this one, the hero was not a teenage girl, which
Right.
or a teenager at all. So, but that's what I thought of as the character. I mean, an antagonist that was more of an antagonist from such a movie, if they actually made them, an adult.
Considering Gilliam the antagonist?
Well, and there are some other characters here that end up being part of the group. I believe Edgar, Tanya, and Andrew are like three of the main characters that end up coming with him from the tail section when they realize. And here's part of the beginning of the plot. These guys have been in this tail section. Well, if I remember correctly, Curtis has been in this for 16 years, if I remember correctly.
Since the beginning, yeah. And
And he has somewhat realized that these soldiers have run out of bullets. So, but they don't know for sure. So,
well, he realizes that in the opening. Yeah, he realizes that in the opening scene, and that might be a useful thing to mention to kind of introduce some of those characters, because you have this opening roll call where they're getting ready to feed them, but they're also, if you will, harvesting kids. and you get this thing with this very no nonsense woman coming in and measuring them and whatever, and you don't know what about, and that's where Andrew and Tanya, they lose their kids, and then you get that Andrew kind of loses it and gets in trouble.
I actually think it's Edgar and Tanya.
No, Edgar is the Jamie Bell character. He is the younger one. Andrew is the one by Ewan Bremner.
Okay.
And yeah, Ewan Bremner and Octavia Spencer, of course, is Tanya.
Well,
but that leads to that horrifying scene where they take Andrew and they stick his arm out the side of the train and time it. They say it'll take 7 minutes, so they do that, and the whole while Tilda Swinton, who plays this minister or whatever,
is very much a Hunger Games character.
Oh, she was. I give you that. She was right out of the Hunger Games, and I loved her performance. I thought she was great in the role. But she's giving a 7-minute speech, but she wraps up early, and they try to get some words from their glorious leader and get nothing. So, but they bring it back, and Andrew basically that whole scene. It was rough. It was like they were torturing the poor guy, basically. And then they take a sledgehammer to his popsicle arm, and it's like, ooh, and all because he was trying to protect his boy, it's like,
and that was the reason why they made the speech that length.
Yeah,
is because they were making it that length because that's like, okay, we got this amount of time before we have to make an example out of this person.
Right.
All right, go ahead and speak. And
I will grant you that does sound like something you might see in the Hunger Games or something like that. And personally, I thought it was a pretty cool touch. But
not only do apparently they have the soldiers as a kind of a front to kind of keep these people in line, but they have these two goons that go by the name of Franco the Elder and Franco the Younger, who are played by Vlad Ivanov and Adnan Haskovic. And what did y'all think about these two goons? I thought that both of them seemed like they were definitely the muscle.
I'll be honest, I barely remember Franco the Younger, and I feel like he might have been offed pretty early. But Franco the Elder, he stuck around, and that dude was
Well, Franco the Younger had a little bit of a fight scene in well, before we get to that scene, let's get to the next few scenes.
Yeah.
So they come in for a roll call, and they ask for a violinist, and I'm not sure I entirely like this part because there's an elderly couple that says, "Hey, we know how to play the violin. We both know how to play a violin. Well, we only need one."
Yeah.
So they take the elderly gentleman out. They smash the fucking shit out of the elderly lady and take him off the Never Land, and you're just kind of left with seeing her go back in line, and it's like they really set the tone for the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's all about establishing, hey, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys.
Oh yeah.
We just wanted to make sure that you knew, just in case you didn't know who they were. I mean, they were pretty obvious, but I think that was the whole idea, so that you could forgive a lot of the crap that they eventually did later on.
Well, yeah.
Right.
And the thing is, you can tell that there was kind of a revolt about to be in process
Yeah.
by these people in the back, because they kept looking to Curtis as like
Mhm.
their leader of, okay, is it time yet? Is
Right.
it time?
Well,
And his buddies like, come on, man, I can't just stand here and watch this shit
right.
happen. And he's
Is
like,
it
it's still
safe?
not time.
And so yes, and his buddy, of course, is Edgar's Jamie Bell, much rather young individual, very hot headed. You don't really find this out right away, but you find out eventually that he was a so-called train baby, that he really has no memory of the outside world. And but one thing that is going on here, you see that Curtis has been getting messages from someone to aid in the rebellion, and Gilliam has been pointing him along. And again, the reveal about that is kind of fun. But in the meantime, they've been operating on, some informant toward the front has been helping them out, supposedly. And yeah, so it's interesting.
So once they realize that they have no bullets, that's in their guns, that's when they storm the soldiers, and they pretty much just take them out, and go. They get into the next room, and that's when they come across the goons and Mason. And they come in with their guns. Well, actually, no. They get to a point where they find themselves in the place in which the bars that they've been eating, which apparently is like a rationed bar of liquid,
Before that,
like liquid chocolate.
I mean, before that even, they have a couple of things. One, the establishment. The reason why he was able to finally figure this out is she had said when they were aiming the gun at, it was Gideon, right? They're aiming the gun at, and
They,
she says basically, uh, just put down that useless thing. And the idea
Yeah.
basically that oh well, it's useless. And he's like, well, they'd never shoot me. But meanwhile, his character's like, oh, the heck they would. They would definitely shoot you if they had the bullets. And you might learn later about why they wouldn't, but definitely not then. And then, of course, they also have to rescue our locksmith before we get to that, which is
Call
the
the
prison
locksmith.
section. And his was it
Yeah.
his what was his relationship with her?
He
She wasn't
said
his
she was
daughter,
his.
was it?
He
Was
said
she
she was
daughter?
his daughter. So yeah, so you get Bong Joon Ho regular Kang Ho Song, who played the patriarch of the con artist family in Parasite, and
Mangoon Minsu.
yeah, is his character name here. Yeah, and he his daughter played by Ko Ah-sung, and she goes by the name of Yona in the movie. And I believe they played a father-daughter pairing in The Host, right? I think I still need to see that movie, but
I
I
believe
think
Oh,
they
it's a
so.
were.
cool
Yeah,
monster flick.
yeah.
I think I have it in the collection.
I need to see. I need to see all of those. But anyway, yeah, Kang Ho Song really was robbed of an Oscar nod last year. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. They wake them up from. They called it the prison section, but it's almost like a morgue. They're like in these, like,
See,
what do we want to say? Drawers, I guess.
I looked
Well,
at it as a section of taking people who
Yeah,
are not quite worthy of the society on the train, but
right,
people who still could prove useful later.
right.
Sort of
and
like, and then freeze drying them for later.
and
Freeze
it
dried.
appears
Yeah.
and it appears that there are also these cubes
Yeah.
that apparently are like crack like substances
Mm-hmm.
that people get high off of,
Yeah,
which
industrial waste.
later we find there's actually a section for those kind of people. Um,
Yeah.
But apparently, in order to get them to open the locks, they entice them with these cubes or circular substances that apparently they can get high on. But
Right.
I love the twist that that has in the end as well, what it really is,
Right.
you know. But we'll get to that. So ultimately, we get them together with this group of ragtag team, and they go into the next room. Was it? Yeah, the next room, and there's all these dudes with axes, and
Yeah.
they say everything in unison, and they do everything in unison, and it's like, are these the Clone War dudes?
Well, that was after the after they went
Well,
through and found out the secret of the food and all that kind of stuff, and
Yeah,
yeah,
reveal. Well, they
it
Too
end
bad
made
it wasn't a
made
Soylent
Curtis
Green
a
type
little
thing, though.
queasy.
they
I
end up
think it
going
should have
into
been
this
Soylent
room.
Green.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking Soylent Green with this movie at the time. Like,
Mhm.
this is like the Soylent Green of apocalypse movies.
It
It's
might
like,
have played. It might have played into the whole idea. They talked about how it killed all life on the planet, but there is that belief, that strong belief that if anything will survive, it will be cockroaches. So that's a creative use of that. I thought.
They are a
Brandon,
viable source of food. I mean, they do
exactly.
provide protein.
I'll bet
They
that
would
part
need
wigged
some
out the wife.
additional stuff. I do think that they probably incorporated some stuff like vitamin C and stuff like that to keep
Right.
them around. But yeah, I mean, it
And
is a
the
viable source of food in the
broken
future.
down machine parts.
And they're talking more and more these days about utilizing bugs as protein
Oh
sources
yeah.
and food
Oh
sources.
yeah.
It's becoming more and more viable, especially as it's harder and harder to get food these days. It's not as, I mean,
Mhm.
it's still easy, but it's getting rougher for, especially for people who are poorer, to get food these
Mhm.
days.
But there's if you're quick enough to catch them, roaches are often nearby.
Often, yes.
let's just hope they're not the singing cockroaches in Joe's apartment. But
One movie I forgot to put on that musical list that I regret was Enchanted, but that whole singing to the roaches was
Oh, shoot, we need to do a comedy or sci-fi month. That'd be kind of
right,
cool.
right.
yeah,
But
I
yeah,
would definitely be down for that.
but that scene you talk about where you see all those dudes in hoods with the weapons, I looked at that and I was like, that's not something you want to see. But actually,
No.
that follows up like, okay, so Yona and Curtis were having a little chat where he said to her, they're standing by the door, and he's like, are you clairvoyant? And she's like, what? And he's like, you seem to know what's behind the doors. And so she just kind of focuses, and then she gets this look of horror, and she says, don't open the door, like right after her father gets the door open. And it's like,
or they're coming.
exactly.
Like that.
No, she said, don't open the door. And then they open it, and it's like,
I
yeah, I can see why she said that.
I really like the design on these guys because they
Right.
had a look of an executioner.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
this is what they are. They are executioners.
Right.
And
But the fact that they had no clear eye holes in the masks, but they had the mouth holes, it just made it all the creepier. It was like,
well, and I think the thing is that they go into an all-out like 300 fight scene here. I'm reminded of the movie 300 because
staged much better than 300. Staged much better.
But
I don't know.
um,
Some people might disagree with that. That we
Well,
don't have here.
personally, I would rather see something like that in real time than at 1/8 speed. Or no, is that what I mean to say? You know what I mean,
I
like
would call this
super
slow
slow.
I would call this like the slow motion fight scene where you get where you can tell that they're focusing on the main two dudes
Yeah.
doing the fighting, and you see the other people getting slaughtered behind them, and then all of a sudden everybody's at a standstill, and Mason starts to speak and say, "Do you really want to die?" You know, kind of a speech,
Well,
and
first, her adjutant calls a break because it's time to celebrate the new year. And so everyone stops mid battle to pass the new year. And it's crazy.
well, yeah, but a little bit before that, everything
Right.
went dark, and they put on these like infrared shit, and I thought that was kind of a cool
Yeah.
element. But then all of a sudden, they had a moment of like daylight, and they dropped everything, and they like threw up their helmets and were like, "Happy New Year!" all in unison. I was like, "What the fuck?" You know,
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing to have in the middle of the fucking movie, a celebration of the New Year.
One thing that is worth noting, and I was intrigued to find this out. Like, Gilliam is named for Terry Gilliam, for the director, and incidentally, Edgar, the Jamie Bell character, is named for Edgar Wright, the director of
Actually,
Scott Pilgrim.
I
So
would love to see this directed by Gilliam. I would
well,
love
I
to
was
see what
going
he had
to
done with this.
I was going to say, though, I feel like there is a Gilliam vibe to this film. It doesn't get nearly as crazy as he would have gone. It doesn't go nearly as well as, shall we say, off the rails as a Gilliam film would. But there is a strong Brazil vibe to much of the movie. And there's a, yeah.
I did want to say two things. One, we have two different characters here that were in Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have Chris Evans, who was one of the exes,
Lucas Lee,
and,
yeah.
And then we also have the teacher,
Allison Pill.
Allison Pill.
Mm-hmm.
And she plays this this pregnant teacher that is very Stepford Wives-ish.
Who was I believe she was Kim Pine in Scott Pilgrim. Very different role.
That song that they sing, it's like,
man.
If the engine stops, we all freeze and die. You know?
Yeah.
There's this section where apparently all the kids end up going and getting taught all about the man,
all the upper class kids,
the man who the man who evidently is the front of the train, the builder or the creator of the train, and there's this whole documentary. There's this whole documentary geared towards him, and it seems like the children are like all obsessed about it.
Right. The children. You mean the Hitler Youth?
Yeah, the Hitler.
It's kind of what it is. It's like they've clearly been indoctrinated in this. Like a couple of them, even the things they're saying are just absolutely despicable. And it's clear that that's what they've been taught, and they're all, good, well-behaved kids. The teacher seems very pleasant.
I disagree. They were not well-behaved. They were nasty little bastards.
Well, yeah, for snot-nosed entitled punks, yeah.
Especially that blonde-haired little girl who stood up and said, "I heard that the tail end were a bunch of savages." Whatever, and she's like, now
Yeah, no, but before I guess we should say on the way to that part, you had the end of that big battle where they end up getting the upper hand and taking Mason prisoner, and
Not only that, but Franco the Younger ended up
yeah,
getting. I think he was impaled on a spear of some sort.
right,
Um, which to me kind of felt like a Vlad the Impaler kind of thing.
right. But I
And
believe that was also the part where Edgar ends up falling, and that was a
Mhm.
really unfortunate. Like, see Curtis torn. Like, does he save his friend or capture the enemy? And he
and
ultimately chooses to capture her.
I think that's when we get the character of Gray. Um,
Yeah. Well,
um,
Gray's been there all along, but he takes a higher role at that point.
yeah, he
Yeah.
becomes like the next best friend,
Uh,
the next best buddy.
who was the mother of the child that was
That would
taken?
be Tanya. That would be, and she was played by
Yeah.
Octavia
Yeah.
Spencer.
Yeah.
That
Which
was
this
a
was the
good
first,
character as well.
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
because she went to Curtis and was like, "Let me be part of this bitch. I'm just as feisty," you know.
Yeah. Well,
And,
she had a very what am we trying to say, vested interest in joining. And
Yeah.
incidentally, Andrew was not there all along because he had lost an arm and he couldn't
Yeah.
really. But
You also
when,
had the artist that was drawing the pictures of
yeah,
everybody,
you
kind of
do have
recording
that.
history.
And both Andrew and Tanya are going around with drawings of their kids that this guy
mhm.
had done. But
Hmm.
and asking, have you seen this child? But yeah, it's worth noting when you talked about the lights going out. Curtis signals, and this kid comes running out of the back with a torch, and they get torch and torch and torch, and finally they all have torches, and they're able to combat the night vision because they have torches. And that, I think, is when Andrew comes forward and joins the fray, and he ends up surviving that battle and coming forward. Basically, at that point, it's Curtis, Tanya, Andrew, Nam, and Yona, I think, are the only ones who move forward along with Mason.
Yeah,
And yeah, so that's and they have this interesting part where you walk through the garden, you go through the aquarium, you go through some nice like parts that I'm kind of like where there actually is a Noah's Ark portion to the train, which is pretty cool.
and
Yeah, the
Uh,
fish, the aquarium was
also,
yeah.
cool.
Well,
also,
apparently Harvey Weinstein didn't, and Hull had to fight him to keep that scene. Apparently, he told him a bald faced lie about, well, my father was a fisherman and this is my tribute to him. Later, he's like, no, I just wanted that scene.
there there is something I do have to mention though during that whole Happy New Year
Mhm,
scene, because shortly after that is where
mhm.
we get Mason talking about the group that actually rebelled years
Yeah,
before,
yeah. Well,
and
that's the scene following the aquarium where they're sitting and having sushi. And that was a nice little sequence, I thought. It
no,
was,
but I thought it was during the scene where they actually see snow because they're actually showing
uh,
these where they actually were buried in snow when they tried to rebel.
that
And
was the teacher actually was showing her class the what did they call them,
The seven or
the
something like that.
the
Right?
revolt of the seven or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The teacher paused them to show class, look out the window, and then she gave that little lecture about it. Yeah,
that's when Namgung turns to Yona and talks to her while they were walking through the garden and said that
no,
last woman that we
this was
saw there.
way after the garden. That was way after the garden.
Hmm,
Like I said, that was the scene with the teacher. But
okay.
he does turn to her later to talk to her about that. And The implication is that his wife had led that rebellion, but I don't know if that's explicitly stated, but I think it was implied pretty heavily.
It was implied that he knew her, and she told him that she thought that it was okay to stay out there in the snow, that you could live in the snow or live out there in the temperature. And as the film progresses, we get more signs of that through.
Yeah.
Well, he said that she was Inuit, and the Inuit, of course, have a pretty good feel for proper winter weather. But this was apparently too soon. It was not proper
Definitely
winter
not
weather.
proper, yeah.
It was a little heavy, a little more hardcore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I kind of that teacher scene is so interesting because it's so. They're just having class. They don't even really care that all these people are standing in the middle of them listening and watching. Like these people that they've been told are scum. They're having this conversations about how they're scum without even batting an eye. And yeah, what's up?
Does anyone else find the concept to be flawed in the way, like this whole train thing? First off, you got nobody to repair the tracks.
Well, yeah.
You barely have anybody to repair the train, and when you do, you cannot repair from the outside. You can only repair from the inside.
Right.
I mean, might as well have freaking Blaine the Mono helping everybody.
It was just a matter of time before the train went insane and started.
I feel like this train concept was a last moment effort fitted to the richest of the people at the time, to me at least. And ultimately this became their like way of life because everything was destroyed, and they had no other choice but to get on the train and survive.
I will admit that during the fight sequence where they went through all those ice flows, that you felt like a couple of them came really close to knocking the train off the tracks. I was thinking, that is going to become a problem. It's strange that it hasn't already. I was thinking that, and I will admit this is a movie that if you want to sit and pick apart at the science of it, you're going to have some troubles. But
I guess suspension of disbelief is required. But
right. Well, that's one of the reasons I mentioned Terry Gilliam, because if you look at it as a Gilliam-esque film, then you're able to take a whole lot more, because most of his films cannot be taken as literal.
Well, and the thing is, part of the backstory of this is that the engine of the train is like the central piece of this train, and being that as it may, it seems like the people on this train have built a religion around of it.
They have,
a cult about it, and the fact that Wilford
all the more timely.
Wilford Enterprises was the god of this universe, and he really felt like he was, I think, too, and
which was also, in a way, it was brilliant casting to bring in Ed Harris to play the guy, because he was also the guy behind the scenes in Truman Show, and it's like, I guess he's kind of the guy to do that sort of role.
Well, yeah, and I'm not even sure if Bong Joon Ho was even thinking about. Well, I don't know if you guys know about Ayn Rand and her.
I know of her.
Yeah, I
Well,
know of I've read Atlas Shrugged, all that stuff.
yeah, the
And
Atlas Shrugged had to do with trains as well, and I wonder
Right.
if there was some concept thinking going on in that direction of
well,
thinking.
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean,
It,
a
it
lot
may
of
if
it
maybe
is,
if maybe not Ho, maybe the original
but
authors of the comic may have been influenced by that. I don't know.
but I do feel like it's they're definitely a very much of a departure from Ayn
Mhm.
Rand and philosophy, if anything.
Oh
The
yeah.
whole
Oh,
concept of basically that uh the whole concept of, the poor uprising against those who were born who were their betters is definitely very much against the whole Atlas Shrugged
well,
concept.
Mhm.
if you
Mhm.
took out the main people in the world and took them to some other place and left the world running, would it be able to survive without those important pieces? That is the concept from Atlas Shrugged. So
Right.
um, uh, that being said, while they are going through this train, they're taking out the people who are running this train.
Right. Right.
Um, at the end, is there really anyone really
Right.
to?
Not a lot. Not a lot. But
Well,
with the
I think that there are people. That's something I think that people actually came up with common sense ways, bunkers, underground shelters that were insulated from the cold, underground greenhouses, things that make
Mhm.
more sense. And there are sci-fi movies about a
Mhm.
nuclear winter where there were underground bunkers as the
Mhm.
solution. So I think that there are
Well,
others. It's just these people went about this crazy, like, ooh, let's get aboard of a
or like
train that travels the
the
world.
Doctor Strangelove thing of a
Well,
mine shaft. We,
it's
Mr. President, we cannot have a mine shaft gap.
it's like Andrew Carnegie ran a medicine show and was like, "Come drink the poison and
Mhm.
come drink the water and it will give you eternal life. Here's my
Mhm.
train. I'll get in it. We'll survive the end of the world."
Right,
Okay, now 20 years later, we ran out of food, we ran out of bullets, we can't control the people. So what do? We feed the children to the train. Okay.
right. Well, and one of the things, and again, we'll when we get to that in a little bit. But that does bring up some interesting concepts, and I've heard a lot of people were disappointed by the end of the movie. But I think part of it is because it goes into very uncomfortable conversations. But like,
Cannibalistic
yeah,
conversation.
but like one thing that I really liked again, with that we didn't quite get to the part where the scene with the students and the teacher turns. And that's the
Oh
part where
yeah.
suddenly, out of nowhere, seemingly, the teacher shoots and kills Andrew, just
Well,
guns him down.
they
And it's
hide
like,
these
yeah,
guns in the
yeah,
eggs, where it turns out, oh, bullets
yeah,
aren't quite as extinct as y'all thought they were.
yeah. And actually, right, right. Curtis gets a what you could call a warning. He gets an egg that has a message in it, and he opens it up and says "blood." And then, like right then, the teacher kills Andrew, and then you see on the TV screen, I believe it is, he sees Gilliam killed, if I'm remembering correctly, or was that a little later? Or so I think it was right
no.
then.
Yeah, I think they go and kill him
Um.
at that point. Yeah.
And yeah, because you had the guy who actually had the egg cart who tossed it aside and pulled the guns out and was like,
Correct.
yeah,
And it's at
yeah,
this point that we see that Franco the Elder
hmm
has started
hmm
his coming after them,
right,
and we get that whole
hmm
scenario where they're going fast
hmm
around this corner, and he's able to
right,
snipe all the way across to where they
right,
are, and they have this moment where
hmm
they both shoot at each
hmm
other, and they both just miss each other, and it's like they both can see.
Well, they both would have hit each other, but the bullets were stopped by the glass. Yeah,
Correct. And they just give each other that look like,
right.
Yeah, good luck
I'm
repairing
stronger than
those
you are.
holes in the glass.
Exactly. But actually, Brandon, you talking about like YA stuff. You know what? Franco the Elder, though, he reminds me, he is this movie's Bond villain. I mean, he really reminds me of a Bond villain.
He's like, the metal mouth stuff like that. Yeah.
And especially with how tough he ultimately proves to be. But I got to say, though, and I've got to agree that the film's not perfect. There are holes in logic. There are holes. And one of them was, first of all, he clearly had a sniper scope on his gun, but Curtis did not. And there is also the fact of he cleared a lot of ground fast to catch up to them. So, that's one thing. But, you've got you've got them moving forward after, obviously they take out the teacher and they take out, some of the other people that were trying to kill them. And move on forward. They go through like the hoity-toity stuff. They see the violinist. He has returned. Addressed. No, this was earlier. Sorry, because I remember. No, it might have been then. But I just remember like Tanya looking at him and going, "Wow, he cleaned up" or something like that.
Yeah.
But and they move along, they get to basically what I got the impression were like the train's equivalent of opium dens, the ones that were strung out on that drug.
They also go through this SeaWorld-y looking thing that I thought was kind of beautiful. But then I was thinking, okay, they probably got some shots inside of SeaWorld.
Oh, they already did that. Yeah. But
I mean, it really is a caste system.
Oh yeah.
And it's not so different than how we've been working hard to establish politically in different times. The idea of if you're born wealthy, you should stay wealthy, and if you're born poor, your dedication in life is to serve the poor.
Oh, we didn't even talk about Mason's shoe speech.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's the idea. That's the whole idea of the speech. If you're born poor, then your lot in life is to serve the wealthy, and if you're born wealthy, it's to be served by the poor. And it's not that different from the politics of today and those same basic concepts.
And again, these very same themes are prevalent in Parasite. I mean, they are absolutely thematically, the two movies work very, very well together. But Parasite is very much grounded in reality.
Actually, South Korea has that struggle, though, when you think about it.
Right.
Well, there really is no gray area. There's either the rich or the poor in here. There's no middle class in this particular train system.
Right.
There's just the poor and then there's the rich.
I disagree because there are levels.
There are levels.
Because you've got you got the gardeners, you've got the guards, and each one is living in different areas and different compartments at different things. So it does go. There is a middle. They don't.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I am looking forward to watching the series on. Is I think that the world could use a little bit more elaboration.
Right.
And it just didn't have time. It's a movie. A movie is not going to be able to explain the whole world building that quickly. It just has to it has to run through it.
Right. And from what I understand, this one played quite fast and loose with the actual story of the comics. Like they apparently decided to use that as more of a jumping off point. So it's probably a loose adaptation from what I understand, but it's I'm sure the TV series supposedly draws from the movie and the comics. So it might be interesting to see how they kind of blend the two together, especially, as you said, over a longer time. But, yeah.
Alrighty, So moving forward
Uh-huh.
where exactly are we on the train? You were talking about the opium den. Well,
I think at that point we're getting close to the front.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
getting closer to the front.
in the opium before we hit the opening dens, we hit a party scene where we got all
Yeah.
this techno music going
Mhm.
on, and then you hit the opium dens,
Mhm.
and there's like two different opium dens because one is like the opium smokers,
Right.
and then there's the one. This is the one right before the front of the train. This is the one where everyone who has taken of the drug and overdosed.
So
Right. And
there were different sections. One section I thought that we should also discuss is the part where you're actually looking at, because when you're looking at the party scene, you're looking at the opium den, you're looking at a lot of the youth, a lot of the upper class youth. I mean, you kind of have like the sauna where they have a huge kind of battle, and most of the people die except for the top three. But you do have, right, I mean, before that, you have all of these nice little apartments. You've got these places where the people are sitting and reading in the gardens,
Well,
the sushi
and
restaurant.
how about
That's
the
where those older
Elizabethan
ones.
period dressed people? You know.
And that's the thing, is I think that you've got those, and oddly enough, it's weird that they put a lot of the younger people, like the early 20s, late teenage peoples, in the front of the train, towards the front, whereas you put a lot of the middle-aged or older, wealthier individuals closer to the center. It's just it's interesting that way. But
Yeah.
it's
Well,
understandable at the end. When you see the end game, you realize that's because the youth are more expendable.
Yeah, they
well,
are that.
and then we have the battle of the Franco the Elder, and we have Curtis, his battle, and his um buddy, who evidently supposedly Yona has been knocked out cold because of the drug in which she is they'd gotten high on or whatever. And we have this battle between Franco the Elder and Curtis. What do y'all think about this battle scene here?
The sauna scene.
Yeah,
Well,
That
it's
was bloody.
some brutal fights going on there.
Yeah, very, very brutal.
And unfortunately, that is the part where Tanya gets taken out, and that was disappointing, But it's it's the two of them. They go at it, and it's interesting.
Well, and then of course we get the whole Curtis finally snapping before they even get to the
Chrono. That's
final.
what it was.
Yeah,
I was trying to remember. Chrono. I was trying to remember the name of the drug. Like I wanted to say Corona, and I'm like that. No, it's not that.
That would be odd at this time, but yeah. Corona.
But in any case, right before we find out what that chrono is for, we get this whole scene where Curtis talks about his years growing up in the tail section, and apparently, one of the things that I thought that was kind of interesting is that Marlboro cigarettes were the last cigarettes on the train.
And Nam supposedly had the last two when he was first introduced.
Yep. And he gave him the last cigarette, and he takes one little puff of it, and that's when he goes into his little story about how he even knows what little babies taste like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a depressing story. I mean, it's kind
Just slightly,
of like
know.
he's saying I was the Donner and we ate the party, So
Right.
Well, he was one of the upstarts. He would have been considered one of the bad guys back then, one of these gang members who was just, grabbing
Right.
people and eating them. And he was shown the way by his mentor who was willing to chop off his own arm in order
Right.
to help him. So in a way, it's his origin story of, okay, this is how I learned to stop
Mm-hmm.
being the bad guy and start being the good guy.
Yeah, how's that for a superhero origin story?
it's
But-
an anti-hero story. So
But-
How I learned to love the bomb.
Now
So-
it is interesting though. It is interesting as though, and I don't know if this was an intentional comparison, but it could very well be in light of what Wilford ends up going on about with population control and that sort of stuff in the next scene. One of the most famous treatises on population control ever written, and just a wonderful piece of short fiction, although it really is a disturbing treatise if you take it seriously, was Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal. And I can't help but think that they were probably intentionally evoking that story with this speech.
So,
But-
what do you all think about the reveal that this chrono that he's been Namsoong's been collecting is
Right.
in fact like the stuff to create a bomb that
That's not really much of a reveal. They've been saying all along how flammable and dangerous it is.
well
It's
to me
something
it
you
was
could
kind
pick
of
up
a
if you were
surprise.
looking.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention really the first time I watched it, so it did catch me a little bit by surprise. But
Yeah, it's
I
kind
really-
of basically the toxic waste equivalent of C4.
Yeah, basically, and apparently you can sniff it and get high on it. So
Right.
at least in this particular, I wonder if C4 is that potent in the drug world to us in this day and age. I'm not
Probably
quite
not.
sure on the C4 level of drugs, but I guess for storytelling, I guess in this particular apocalyptic world viewing, maybe it just became that way.
Mhm.
But then we get Curtis being ushered in by this red-haired
Mhm.
female with a gun to meet the
Claude.
yes,
Yes.
the head of the train,
Mhm.
Wilfred,
Mhm.
who evidently was in league with our Gilliam character.
Yeah.
Evidently, they were both co-founders
Mhm.
of this Wilford Enterprises,
Mhm.
and he was the construction of the project, and Gilliam was the brains of the outfit.
Mhm.
And ultimately, what do y'all think of Ed Harris's character here? I know we somewhat talked about it, but
Mhm. He's very interesting. He plays Wilford as sort of a little worn out a little bit, like he's tired, he's ready to do something, less stressful than constantly keeping the train running, but he loves it. It has been his life for so long, and this is what I was talking about. He sits Curtis down and gives him this very long, well, not like super long, but very in-depth talk about balance and population and all this kind of stuff. And he actually presents reasonably understandable arguments. They're not necessarily morally right or appropriate, but it's an interesting conversation that they have that clearly Curtis is put off by it at first, but you can see him not rejecting
Well,
it out of hand. And this is where the movie reminded me a little bit of Watchmen, a little bit. There's that Alan Moore connection. It reminded me a little bit of the moral ambiguity at the end of Watchmen.
Well, and I wonder if taking him to that engine and having him stand there, I wonder if the way that the engine was going on either side of him, if he wasn't trying to hypnotize him into believing these beliefs, because he's standing there listening to this whole while this humming is going in the background, and I was just thinking he's trying to hypnotize him.
I don't think he was trying.
I actually agree with Dave on this. Not necessarily hypnotizing, but keep in mind there was a part in the beginning of this where Gideon, I think it was, it said basically just cut out his tongue, don't listen to what he has to say,
right,
and move forward. That is the thing, because what he says can make sense. It may not be hypnotizing per se,
right,
but it is enticing.
I don't think he was trying to do anything underhanded or anything like that. He was trying to convince him, but he does have a convincing manner. He's not. You've come to believe that he's going to be this horrible demagogue that, and then you meet him and he's just this unassuming guy that, it's kind of interesting. Now, the fact that he and Gilliam were supposedly working together, you do have to bear in mind that Wilford is an unreliable narrator. So it may not be the case that he and Gilliam were in cahoots. It may not be the case. But he does.
I believe they were, but that's
I believe they probably were too, but
that's why I considered him an antagonist when I was talking about him at the beginning.
But you know what I mean, though, because Wilford's an unreliable narrator, it does leave room for doubt, and it's kind of interesting that they do that. The thing that really starts, I guess, snaps Curtis out of it is when Yona comes up and she starts clawing at the floor, and they pull it up, and that's when they find Tanya's boy running the machine, basically. And they're like, there's something wrong with that. And Wilford's like, well, yeah, it started breaking down. We had to replace the parts. And it's like, with kids. Yeah.
For kids.
Exactly. And it's like, he's like, yeah, they're the only ones small enough to get down there. And it's like, yeah. But he talks about things like units and whatever. And Mason did the same thing. They have this very, and actually I'm reminded of the Robert Frost poem, Departmental. And the line, you couldn't call it unkind. I'm probably misquoting here, but you couldn't call it unkind, but how very departmental. That's what it reminds me of, because they're not thinking of these people as people. They are thinking of them as units. They are thinking of them as a mass that needs food, that needs shelter, that needs water, that needs to be eliminated if there's no room for them, or if they break down, or you know what I mean. And it's a very inhumane way of looking at the passengers on the train, but it's also relentlessly logical. So it's kind of like, this is evil, but it's not evil for evil's sake. It
sounds like it was all done on good intentions to
for the greater good,
survive this world, to be honest. And it's kind of like the powers that be chose to build a society on this train to outlive the other society, in order to have a fundamental system that works for them or worked for them at the time. And it's just in that idealism, you'll always have someone that has something against it and will buck the system.
Oh yeah, anytime you push someone down and treat them as less than human, they're going to want to have a change of plans. Yeah.
And ultimately, what do y'all think about how the train ended up off the rails?
It was bound to happen anyway.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. An avalanche brought it off the rails.
Yeah.
Which I made this point earlier. This was probably not something somebody thought through. What was it that they say in Meet the Robinsons? I don't think that someone thought this through entirely.
Well, like I said, that's also a common a thing that De Niro's character says a few times of William H. Macy's character in Wag the Dog. He didn't really think it through.
At least the train survived for quite a few years.
Yeah.
In this whole infrastructure,
18, I believe.
The new year that they celebrate in the middle of the film, I think, was the marking of 18 years.
Actually, sure. I know it was 18 years because he said we'll leave 18 of them alive for the anniversary.
Exactly. That's what
that's why I think this film is more of a New Year's movie. It has that. In the total middle of the film, it has Happy New Year, and it's like I didn't really want to hear Frosty's return in this film, but okay.
A film though where there were almost no survivors, where literally you have two people walking away from the wreckage of a train that supposedly contains the remainder of the human race. That seems like a somewhat of a down note to start the new year on.
Well, I guess there was one man and one female, so I guess
Technically,
it would start off like Adam and Eve. Thereabouts. So
yes.
At the beginning of creation, there were supposedly one male and one female. So.
Right.
But
they do leave it a little unclear about whether they were the only survivors, but it definitely doesn't look good for most of the others.
Oh, no. My theory is that they all get eaten by the polar bear that they see at the end, and that's just how it ends. Is that they all get slaughtered.
I did like that little touch where like they've been going on the whole time about how there was no life left on Earth. And I'm sitting there thinking the whole time, you're talking about your potential plot holes or whatever. Unless if what they did strictly brought the temperature down, if that's all that happened, there is probably nothing the human race can make that would kill all life on the planet.
Oh yeah.
Now it's debatable. It's debatable whether a polar bear could have survived. But I guarantee you there was life left in the oceans. There was microbacterial life left. There probably were a couple of roaches left near the equator.
I was gonna say, especially roaches.
And so I think there definitely is that little, the appearance of the polar bear though is a nod to that idea that there was still life out there, that the people on the train were probably being a little arrogant, assuming that there was none left.
Well, we do know for a fact that the rest of his people in the tail section were slaughtered.
Pretty much, yeah.
By
Well, all but
the
18
character.
anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was slightly before the train ended up in the avalanche. But that being said, let's go into production and how. What did the production have any value for you?
I think production-wise, it was pretty well done. The
Costume
visual
design.
effects were pretty solid. The costuming, makeup, all that stuff was pretty solid. It was a little drab and dreary in the back, but that's to be expected.
Well, yeah, I was getting like a factory type of a sweatshop kind of a vibe.
Well, as you said, it's sort of a Dickensian vibe. Well, you were talking about with Popeye, you thought it was more Dickensian, but I would definitely think a Dickensian vibe.
There was a Dickensian vibe in one of the compartments where they went through, and all of them were dressed up like they were on deck at the Titanic. So it was like.
I'm thinking more like the working class that you usually would associate with with Dickens. You could say there definitely was a vibe of like the industrial England, kind of really grim, grimy, grungy, not pleasant in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the tail end and more towards the front end of the train, it's like you had your instances of drabbiness. So,
but also, like you said, instances of visual flair. Definitely, there was some significant costume changes. This is a kind of where the Hunger Games in Illusion falls apart because none of the rich characters were nearly as crazy looking as the rich in the Hunger Games, but they were still, I think Titanic is a closer illusion there. Certainly some of the aquarium scene was visually gorgeous. The garden section was pretty nice looking too. I mean, there was some really nice visual flair, and the way they filmed all the exteriors, all that snowscape, and I think they did really well with that.
I thought they did too. I thought that the what they saw on the outside of the train was reflected well on screen, especially when they talked about the airplane or cargo hold that evidently went down that way, or an airplane or something like that. When he was talking about the fact that the snow was beginning to melt off these suckers, and that's why he thinks that that they'll be able to survive on the outside.
Right.
I thought that that was reflected well within measure of filming time.
I just thought that the whole premise was a bit well, again, maybe I need to read the comics or look at things in the longer frame, because to me this is like implausibility the movie. I think my ending of the last of humanity dies because a polar bear eats the rest of them is a viable ending,
and it would be intensely appropriate given the way that we've treated polar bears. But
I will say that IMDb gives it a 7.1 rating.
Oh, it's a high rated movie.
Man, it's not a bad it's not a bad movie by any means. It was disappointing to me because I was expecting a lot more, because Host was a lot better in my opinion. But
here's my question.
What
were you expecting?
That's a good question. I think I was expecting something more along the lines of Host at
Mm.
the time. I mean, obviously, this is long before Parasite, so I couldn't
Right.
really have my expectations up that high. And I don't know. I felt like I got more sci-fi channel movie than really thoughtful horror movie. I feel like it was more of a the what I got was a YA novel adapted for
Okay.
adults.
To
That's
me,
what I got.
a sci-fi movie is Ghost Shark.
Yeah.
Or something
Or
island.
Sharknado.
This, on
Let
the
me
other
change this around. I looked at it more as it felt more like The Hunger Games. It felt more like The Maze Runner, those types of
Still haven't
movies,
seen Maze Runner.
but more in line for adults than for
Hmm.
teens. I felt like they were trying to adapt those teenage novels to
Mhm.
adults.
Now, one thing I will say, personally, I love the Hunger Games series, but I will admit that they are.
I like the first
Um,
movies. The
mhm.
second two were a hell of a lot more slower.
Yeah.
But go
I,
ahead.
I well, I was going to say one criticism I do have for the Hunger Games, which is kind of strange, because I absolutely love Jennifer Lawrence. She's welcome to call anytime.
I like her.
Uh, she I actually think she gives a good performance in the Hunger Games. It's not anywhere close to her best. Most of the rest of the cast, I think Donald Sutherland is brilliant as President Snow. I think he is a wonderful villain. And some of the other performances are great. I feel in this movie that the performances were uniformly great. I do not think there were bad performances here. I don't think
Oh,
there were really mediocre performances. I think they were all good to great. Tilda Swinton was great. I don't usually see her cut loose like that. She's usually more serious or what
I
have
love
you.
the fact that she
why
takes
so
her dentures
serious?
out.
What's
I love
that?
the fact that she takes her dentures out and she's
Yeah.
like, "Ugh."
Now, weird bit of trivia. Bong Joon Ho apparently wrote that role with John C. Riley in mind. I don't remember exactly how or why he changed the casting, but they actually intentionally the parts where she's called Sir, that was when he intended to cast a male for the role, and they just left it in, and I think it still worked for the character. But I want to mention a couple other things on the production. For one of the production partners, apparently Ho is close friends with Chan-wook Park, the director of Old Boy and The Handmaiden, and some other very very dark films. And he is a producer on this film, which is kind of cool. I didn't know that before. And like I said, there was a Weinstein connection because Harvey Weinstein wanted to recut it for American audiences. And apparently his cut bombed with the test audiences. And they decided to go with the original cut in an ultra limited release because he didn't want to be proven wrong. But the box office was so strong, they extended it and made it a wide release. So that was like, it was an interesting, a rare failure for him before everyone learned that he was a failure.
Well,
But
let's talk about favorite scenes. What would your favorite scene be, Brandon? And then I'll
Oh,
go over to you, Jake.
Mhm.
I liked a lot of this. I did like a lot of this movie. I thought that I mean, my favorite scene. Gosh, there's a lot of decent stuff going on with it. I like anything having to do with the world building, to tell you the truth. So there's really
Mhm.
not a specific scene. I
Mhm.
like when they
Do it.
Um,
Yeah, Brandon, you cut out.
Sorry, you can hear me now, right?
Yeah.
My phone went into like battery saver. Any case, I think anything that shows off the train, the world building is a favorite for me. Maybe the classroom scene, if I
Mhm.
have to pick one. But in truth, I think they're all pretty darned good as
Mhm.
far as overall. I wish that there was more, and I think this is going to have me more interested in watching Snowpiercer, the series,
I
because
almost
of it.
I almost wonder if there was a longer cut to this movie.
Oh, I'm sure there was.
Mm.
I wouldn't mind if they did like it went back with Bong Joon Ho and decided to see what he had on the cutting room floor and do like an ultimate cut, like
Right.
sometime on the road, like they did Batman versus Superman, and now that they're doing this Zack Snyder cut and whatnot, you
Right.
know.
And not
Uh,
that we necessarily need a was it 6 hour cut or whatever this one. I mean, but yeah, maybe a 2.5 to 2 3/4 hour, maybe 3 hours. That could be interesting because this does clock in at just over 2. It's not a super long movie. Yeah.
Although, according to the regular goers, anything over an hour and 16 minutes is a long movie. So,
Now, I would say right now we're at $1.31 for this talk. That's a pretty darn good length for a
yeah,
movie. But
Yeah, I
I am
think
I
so.
am more than willing to go 2 hours if I have the time and I'm invested in the movie. Like if it's a movie that, let's say for example, Pi, I would have been very displeased if that was a 2 hour movie. Uh, there, there are some where I'm glad they're shorter. And then
definitely.
there are some, like, let's say Pearl Harbor could have been 2 hours, and I don't think we would have really lost a whole lot. So there,
Well,
there are times. Hmm?
what would be your favorite scene from this particular?
It's hard to say my clear favorite. I love the aquarium scene just for the visual wonder of it and for the backstory behind it. I love I like the scene in the classroom because of how disturbing it gets. It's there's a lot of little moments scattered throughout. I like the conversation with Wilford at the end. I do like that scene, and the one right before it between Curtis and Nam. So there's some good stuff. That striking image of the door opening and all the people in the hoods and the axes. That was a striking image. And the film is full of striking images. That's for sure. Um, and one thing we haven't really mentioned, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. We've mentioned some of the issues with the science behind this and whatever. But as anyone who knows me knows, any film that tackles real issues of environmental importance gets my vote of, good on you for doing that. And we haven't really talked about the exact start of the whole thing, which is kind of strange that we skipped that. But basically, the world was going it was overheating from global warming, and all the world's nations decided to do an experiment where they would bring the temperature down by a few degrees by releasing something into the atmosphere, but it didn't work.
Yeah,
Or it worked
that's
too
the
well,
thing.
let's put it that way.
We
And
overshot just a
we
little bit.
overshot just a little. But I like that aspect that the film does have a strong environmental undercurrent, and also that it has a strong sociopolitical undercurrent with the
Yeah.
whole class warfare thing.
See,
Well,
So I do appreciate
that's
those
something that
aspects.
and
I agree with I agree with Jacob on that. Is
Yeah.
that it does have. I love the the class warfare element of it,
Hmm.
and in truth, there is a lot of that. If you look at it into society and reflecting on it,
Hmm.
people born this way, and a lot of times, people who are born with that level of power seek to hold that power and
Hmm.
not share it with others.
Hmm.
So there is that fight, and you see it. You see it in legislation. You see it
Hmm.
in politics in most countries in the world of people basically trying to pass legislation to say if you are born in this class level, you should stay this class level.
Hmm.
And meaning if you're born poor, you should always be poor. If you're born rich, you should always be born rich, no matter
Hmm.
how hard you work, no matter what you do. This is how it should be. And I think it is a valuable lesson to be learned in the world.
Well, and again, that comes back to that speech that Mason gives. Oh, here we have right here. I think this is the speech.
The
Yes,
shoe thing.
yes. We must each of us occupy our preordained particular position. Would you wear a shoe on your head? Of course, you wouldn't wear a shoe on your head. A shoe doesn't belong on your head. A shoe belongs on your foot. A hat belongs on your head. I am a hat. You are a shoe. I belong on the head. You belong on the foot. Yes,
Mhm.
so it is. In the beginning, order was prescribed by your ticket. First class, economy, freeloaders like you, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, that is such an awful speech to be giving, but it really does sum up the mentality that half the train has. I mean,
Well, and you wouldn't think
yeah.
that would be far fetched from a prison warden of like Auschwitz or something like that,
Right.
telling their German Jews exactly what they are in this
Hmm.
hierarchy society. So I
Hmm.
wonder if that isn't what he was going for here in this particular role for Tilda. I think my favorite scene, because
Hmm.
I'll just wrap it up here with my
Hmm.
favorite scene. I think I would have to go with Chris Evans' scene with Nam,
Hmm.
right before he hits. For some reason, just the way that he's talking about his time
Hmm.
in the tail section, that just really hits home how much he
Hmm.
had to go through to get to where he is now. And
Hmm.
the fact that he's finally here and there's no one from whence he started this journey with him.
Hmm.
It's kind of like, why did I even begin this journey?
Hmm.
Uh, I thought that things would be different,
Hmm.
and they're not. And I'm just realizing that now. Are we
Hmm.
fucked? Is our world ending? Anyways,
Hmm.
what do we think about the music?
Oh, it was good.
That's
Yeah.
very good for what it
Yeah.
was.
I mean, I thought it was solid. It helped, set the tone, set the mood. Music by Marco Beltrami. You never go too wrong with him. He does good stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
and I guess "Strange Brew" by Eric Clapton was in there somewhere. So
I
um,
don't remember hearing that, but yeah.
well, it's part of the soundtrack credits, so
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, might have been an end credit song. So,
Could be.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I'm not. If the music doesn't stick out to me 100%,
Mhm.
sadly, it just fades into the background.
Oh,
Only if the
oh.
music is really bad,
Mhm.
non-existent, or really good does it truly speak to me
I think
in
I
one
was
way or the other.
paying I think I was paying a little more attention in part because I absolutely loved the music to Parasite. So I think I was kind of listening out a little bit for what it would sound like here. But I will admit that overall it didn't leave as much of an impression. Yeah.
Alrighty. I think that's all the time that we have for today, folks.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
let us go into our outros,
Mhm.
and why don't we figure out exactly who we are? So, Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, I'm Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World. Of course, we are all about physical media here. Though we do cover occasional digital entertainment, not like 100%, of course. Now, this time, of course, mostly what we do three things typically on the show. We do news, we do pickups, and we do what we call vlogcasts. Of course, if you are of any interest of award season, you should check out our Oscar vlogcast because we kind of go back to how we had done things in the early days, where it's just me and Jake, and we are passionately talking about the subjects. So I
Yep.
really do feel like they are worth hearing, even though the length is substantial. Um,
Do
also,
it in
though,
little pieces, and it'll work fine.
also, I've been getting requests lately to divide up our new releases into themes, or at least to separate the anime out, which I may decide to try and experiment with in the future. We've been
Hmm.
doing some experimentation with our pickup videos, so
Hmm.
which of course we don't have any monetization with that because of that, but we weren't making any money anyway, so you know. And finally, I am working on showing off my digital collection and doing a Let's Play series once a week after that. So this Friday will be my Steam collection. And then I'll be just going through randomly one game every week uh, to try them out, whether I like them or not. But finally, of course, I do work with Inside Movies Galore. So to continue our Western-oriented, non-superhero comic book month,
Mhm.
we are going to be covering as a pre-show Tales from the Crypt. What was it? The night. Gosh,
Isn't it
Demon
like
Night.
Demon Knight?
Yeah, Demon Knight, which Dustin should be with us on this time, so it'll be a treat.
Hopefully.
And well, it's his hosting time, so we'll need to make
Yeah.
sure we have backup for that.
He's
And of
ignored
course,
that before, just so you know.
so the of course our main show is going to be a real treat, which I'm sure that he probably won't be there for, which is Ghost World. I've got the
Woo!
comic. I'm ready to try and read it,
Mhm.
and I am very excited to dig into my Criterion copy.
I wish I had a
So,
Criterion copy. Hmm.
so yes, very much interested in
They
that.
out of stocked me when I tried to order it. I was very annoyed.
Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay, I'm Jake. I am also here in Central Virginia as the co-host of Septum Sin versus the World. And as he said, we have some very intriguing videos on the docket for you this week. And we'll is it next week that we're tackling Steins Gate?
Uh,
Or
I
2
think it's
weeks?
the week after. Yeah, it's the
Okay,
week
good.
after
Because
because it's
I
the
still need
last
time.
Monday.
Okay,
Yeah, I
so
just started the first episode, so I
yeah.
definitely would be like,
See,
crap.
I was trying to watch it with someone, and I may not be able to maintain that schedule. I'll have to watch it on my own, but it's a fun show. But that's coming up in 2 weeks. Our discussion of Steins Gate, chosen by Animazing Collections Roger, who will no doubt be joining us, and hopefully we'll get some other fun folks on there too. I, of course, am also a collector of anime, television, movies, music, comics, you name it. It's good stuff. Media in general. Um, And I would like to do reviews, but I just never seem to find time for them. So maybe sometime in the future. I am in the process of trying to start a new business. So that's taking up a lot of time. So at any rate, but I've always still got time to watch the movies and get on with these fine folks. So yeah.
Alrighty, and my name is David Struggy. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So hopefully you've enjoyed following along with our rambling discussions, and hopefully you'll find something to use as a copy, as a possibility to go and check these films out. Don't go by our thoughts alone. Figure it out for yourself and let us know down in the comments what you thought of this film and whether you thought we were right or wrong. So, but as Septum Sin has let us know, there are 2 other films that we're going to be discussing next week, same time, same channel. So, for some more exciting adventures in the film world, and we'll probably be coming to a station near you. So thank you. Don't board any trains anytime soon. I'm sure this movie, since it's set in 2031, that's 10 years down the road. Let's hope we're not heading off the rails like that this film ended up being. And have a good night, everyone, wherever you are. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.